is to learn.
Well,
I mean, learning is a benefit.
Okay, your learning is to benefit for you.
Right.
Because you're getting knowledge from them, you're
Mm-hmm.
getting advancement from them. What do they expect for themselves?
Mm-hmm. We do not know what to do. We are here to learn and to ask, and maybe
it is
then
good
after.
to learn, you know. It's
Uh-huh.
good to learn, and learning is not limited, and you have the right to learn quite a lot. If one of them comes to you and asks you, why do you come to film them? What do you expect to offer them, and what's the benefit that they'll get from all this kind of filming? What do you think you can answer them?
I mean, I think the best answer would be, we hopefully can allow your voice to be heard to some people, and that would not hear. I think that would be the best response I could offer.
I'm sure it is not easy for you to answer these questions because they have undergone through a number of these photography or filming activities and so forth. And over the 2 decades, they still remain in the status they have been in.
What would you personally like to see when someone comes and films?
It's important that these countries, or those who really think on developing the people, should understand the root causes of the problem. There are a lot of complex things. Some of these things are contributed to by the Western countries themselves.
The beneficiaries of this food at the first place do not understand who is giving them food. It is America giving you food. Then they feel proud that there are people somewhere who are human beings like them, who at least respect their dignity. And then most of the time in their churches, they pray that let God help the benefactors who are helping them. They have never seen even America. They have never heard about it. But they just wonder if they take one piece of food like this, may God bless a person who sent this food here.
Food must be increased. Let it not be stopped. So that we may have big bottom. Before we have very little food, that we had no bottom. Big.
You have cows. You have goats. You have the land. You have water. You have petrol. But why are you very thin? Today we want to discuss and we want to listen. The visitors want to know. Suppose this food is not there. How are you going to survive?
Suppose somebody asked you to go on a drawing board and work out how you can start developing this area. How would you go about it?
I would encourage people to leave.
To do what?
To leave.
To leave.
Yeah.
LEAVE.
To leave. To go to somewhere where the land is more fertile, where there's more industry, where there's water. Where
No.
And I would leave this area. I would leave this area as it is.
That would be your plan. Instead of asking people to move, it is really trying to see the resources available and how they can be tapped.
Yeah.
It may be very expensive, but in the long run, it really pays.
Yeah.
I am sure.
Mwana talitambula bamugulire ngozi mwana talitambula bamugulire ngozi bamusibye ku mugongo mwana oyo mwana talitambula bamugulire ngozi.
In Sudan, we had hoped to learn about Darfur. Instead, we found out about Food Aid, the international response to crisis, and how helping in Africa is rarely as it seems.
U.S. food aid is governed by something called the Farm Bill. That means the first beneficiary of U.S. food aid are the American farmers. And in addition, American shippers. Basically, USA is the #1 food aid donor. They have invented food aid. And by definition, the US food aid must be imported from USA.
That food aid comes from the US, the European Union, and for next year they are inclined to expect that some aid will come. And to some extent this will undermine their inherent motivation to change circumstances.
If you think of the West's perception of the UN or of food aid, what do you feel like is most misunderstood or is missing from their understanding of what you do or what your organization does?
At the end of the day, the world hunger problem today is a combination of many factors. Sometimes people refer to our work as one encouraging dependency of the people on food aid. I would strongly refute that. The food aid will not resolve that problem. We do need more development. We need to help people grow food or produce food rather than just give it to them. But we do not have the luxury to sit and talk and hopefully achieve the ideal one day while the millions are suffering as we speak.
The Sudan is destruction. Everybody need to kill another person. How much does a gun cost?
Well, I think now they are around 5.
5 what? 5 cows?
5? Well, for it cook, 3 cows.
However, when we stopped at a U.S. government-funded clinic, we saw that hunger was still at large in Ethiopia. At the time, Ethiopia was producing enough food to feed the entire country. Yet children were starving when there was no drought in sight.
Since 95, basically, with the exception of 2003, Ethiopia was in a situation of global food security, national food security. Enough food was produced in the country to feed everybody. But it doesn't mean that the food security was good at household level. The poor people, they don't have money to buy the food. Even when you have a good harvest, you have still all these people in need of foreign assistance. It's a problem of poverty and not a problem of climatic shock.
How is it possible that we could be in such a fertile region and yet there would be so much malnutrition? ብዙ ለምሳሌ አንድ ሰው ስኳር ድንች ብቻ በየዓመቱ የሚያመርት ሰው አለ። በቆሎ ማምረት የሚችሉ በቆሎ ያመርታሉ። በጣም ምስኪኖች ከሆኑ ስኳር ድንች ብቻ ነው የሚተክሉት እና ደግሞ ያችን ስኳር ድንች ሽጦ ይጠቀማታል። ለምግብነት እሱ ብቻ ሲሆን ያ ችግር ነው ውስጥ
One of the frustrations of our administrator who just left aid, Andrew Natsios, was in Ethiopia, where he observed that we were providing hundreds of millions of dollars in food aid year after year, but our budget for longer-term agricultural development so that they can grow their own food and feed themselves was less than $10 million a year.
And he quit because of that?
No, but this was a battle he fought with Congress year after year. Give us more money so that we can make these long-term development investments.
Look, you are NGOs, and since years you have been sending mail to you private donors saying we have to feed the poor, hungry children in Ethiopia. And suddenly you say, whoops, look guys, it's not true. They are not hungry, they are poor. It's a different problem. It's about entrenched poverty. Food aid is not the solution. And you start all the speech, it doesn't work. If you say to the private donors in Great Britain, in USA, we have to feed the hungry children. Oh yes, money is there.
Around 2,140 children who have been linked with our sponsors. So these are the main source of funds for our development interventions.
She is at least 8 and 9 years old, but her mother and father decided to marry her.
Because if she stay at home, they don't have to feed her, so they have to marry with someone else, just for economical reason, because of poverty.
So you have 2,000 children that are sponsored by people in Spain.
Yeah.
Do you get a certain amount of money for each child, or how does it work?
We don't give the money to the child. We only just fund the development initiatives, because we believe that when the community changes, then the life of these children will be improved.
You know, Grandma has like 2 or 3 pictures in her fridge. Yeah, I've sponsored a child before. That adds to the complexity, and when you find out that, everyone who gives money thinks they're giving money to a child, pay for their school books, and they're really going to community centers and stuff, and that makes sense, but it's a little deceiving. I mean, it's really interesting.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, when we talk about like busting the myths around aid and development, that's a big one.
Before we left Ethiopia, people made sure to tell us that other projects had come before this one, and that they had yet to see long-term change.
We know we already have a role. America, Europe are here in Ethiopia, but we want to know what you want that role to be.
The donors must come the rural area and approach that directly the farmers. The donor said or asked the farmers, what's the fund go? What's the fund to go? ግን ጠብ ያለ ነገር ግን የለም። ይህን በአይነት ታያለ። በአይነት ታይም 11 ዓመት እዚህ ጃናሞራ ነበር። ጃናሞራ ላይ መጥቼ ግን በቃ ቆርቆሮ ነው የምታየው። WFP አለ፣ ለምሳሌ ሌሎች ዩኒሴፍ ነበር። Food security.
Even in the villages, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say cynicism, although it's not far from cynicism, but a lot of disappointment and pessimism about development, because most often what they see is a direct benefit which is short-lived. The program finishes, and so does the impact.
It gets back to that question that is a part of our film. It's in our synopsis. Where do I stand in relation to an Ethiopian impoverished person? What is my just relationship with them? That's a good question.
Hello? 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 Does anyone want any sunscreen? Like this. Ready? Put some in your hand. Put on your nose. On your nose. On your nose. It's so you don't burn for the sun. Don't eat it. Don't eat it.
At the border of Ethiopia and Kenya lies the Chalbi Desert. Notorious for bandits and rebels, a grain truck with 2 armed guards was our only option for the ride south.
Put your box up, we'll go in front. Do you really think it's necessary to lock them together? Nick, are they all chained together? Cool. Did you lock Turtle's zippers? Awesome. Anyway, we gotta watch out because there's a security situation.
They come with guns.
Yeah? Is it dangerous?
You know that town we have left here?
Yeah, we just left.
That one was hit. It was when? To July.
Yeah.
This year.
What happened?
Everybody was killed that time.
Everyone was killed.
Whoever survived, there's somebody who hid himself somewhere.
By the bandits?
Yeah. They come shooting. Most it is not during daytime. It's at night.
At night.
That's why we have to cross here during daytime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but if you risk at night, that's when you come across it.
After the 36-hour journey, we stopped at Wind of Hope, where Khadija Rama runs an orphanage for children whose parents died of AIDS and who often have the virus themselves.
The children have just asked, have you put me in a measurement of standard, or are you walking me in the measure of life? The life of a person living with HIV/AIDS and in poverty, or a child who is left heading a household. Are we really looking at that life holistically? The psychosocial aspect of that particular child, the emotional feelings, or are we just sitting on big tables, in round big tables or in big parliaments and deciding on their fate just as statistics in our files and books?
I want my life. Nataka maisha yangu without the pain. Bila uchungu. I want my life. Nataka maisha yangu without the aid. Bila ukimwi. Without the aid. Bila ukimwi.
We bring these children in after they have lost their parents to provide quality care, especially if the child is sick. We try to build a situation whereby they belong to each other and support each other. A feeling of sharing, of being self-reliant. But most of it is a gradual process because it's about attitudes and cultural practices, which actually need quite some time to change.
Lakini venye nacheza na wenzangu wakinisikia nikikoa, kuna wale wananikimbia na kuna wale tunacheza nao vizuri. Lakini nafurahia kwa venye si wengi sana wananitenga zetu na tunakula nao hapa vizuri na tunacheza, na nafurahia kwa vile madam aticha alinileta hapa ajili niko na watoto wa rika yangu na tunacheza nao vizuri.
That guy just found out he was HIV negative. It's pretty nice. You all right? Brandon, stop.
You don't talk to me about it.
I mean, I don't want to talk about it. I don't know what to say. There's a kid out there waiting for the same test, and then there's 40 kids in the playground who all have HIV, and then this guy's okay, and it was just, 4,000 people in this small town have had the opposite news.
Fungua ile dormitory kwanza.
so difficult because I just read this book about this guy who's been working in aid and development, fighting poverty for 30 years, and he still doesn't understand it. Doesn't understand. People know different components that make poverty what it is, talking about lack of health and sanitation and education and isolation, et cetera. All these things create poverty. But once the poverty's there, like how to combat it, how to change it. A lot of people claim to know how, but I can't believe that that's true because of how much poverty there is.
It's not true, because if it was true, there could have been some kind of impact and some kind of change. That is why many policies that are put on papers or guidelines about intervention on HIV/AIDS, they're not very realistic. I go to some meetings with big organizations when they talk about HIV/AIDS. The things they talk on tables are never realistic on the ground. They're thinking that if they give food, they might create a dependency syndrome. To some extent, it's true, it might create a dependent syndrome. But actually, AIDS came and made people so dependent because it rendered you helpless. And when you're helpless, then you need help. But you can never try to bring the reality, even describing it in their meetings. Because every time they're off the schedule, we are rushing, we want to finish the program. It's not the program they want to finish. They want to run away from reality. Tutakusaidia, wachana na viatu. She would like to go out.
You know, I'm conscious I'm paid quite a lot of money to do my job, and I don't feel that I can justify my job unless it really is making a difference to people on the ground. And I guess my frustration is that the nature of my job, essentially as running a very large group of people, is that I am not in direct touch, as much as I would like to be, with the people we're trying to help.
What does this woman need right now?
She needs a proper care for her child. She says that's her priority. It's like she's given up herself.
The fact of the matter is that the poor countries need more help, and they need it urgently. The idea that there's adequate aid is now believed by nobody that looks at this closely. And that's the bottom line. We have to increase aid to Africa by $25 billion per year by 2010. We have to reach 0.7% of GNP, a promise that was first made in 1970, but remains unfulfilled 35 years later.
If the richest 28 countries in the world increased the amount of money they give to the third world by 3 times, would that make all the difference?
Not without proper monitoring and evaluation. So if a person who is actually giving 3 times is not minding about the monitoring and evaluation and this money reaching to that particular person you've seen there, even if you put it 10 times.
The healthiest question that the development industry has to ask itself is, what percentage of every development dollar is actually going to the people who, as it were, are on the development front line? Because if it's being chewed up in consultancy fees in Washington and Brussels, or being chewed up in, you know, motor cars and stuff, then it's just not a good use of money.
Until we realize how these persons actually live and feel, that's the only time we can know how we can really intervene with HIV/AIDS.
Leaving Wind of Hope for Nairobi was a big change. The capital city has the familiar tall buildings and paved roads of the West. But it is also home to Kibera, one of Africa's largest slums.
mumwebaze Adonai kubanga mulungi
kubanga okusaasira kwe kwalubeerera
mumwebaze lubale waba lubale
kubanga okusaasira kwe kwalubeerera
mumwebaze Adonai owabami
kubanga okusaasira kwe.
So, first having TB is a very scary thing. As in really scary. When I first noticed that I had it, it was like a shock to me because I thought I was going to die.
What do you think about international organization helping you with your TB?
I think they're really helping because, they're really helping. Because if the drugs were at all to be sold, I don't think we could afford them. So I believe they are really helping people.
Who do you think pays for those drugs, though?
I really don't know that.
International aid organizations were providing free HIV and TB drugs in the shanty town, but little nutritional support.
How long do you think she'll live?
It's difficult to tell because even the last time that I was here, she was weaker and she wasn't.
Sahii nasikia njaa sana, sina chakula. Sahii napata hivi. Pole. Hapa. Ni hapa. Na hapa. Uji. Kwa uji mwenye walikuwa anatupea hakukuwa. Alikuwa ameenda, si ndio? Halafu si ndio tukakaa hivyo tu. Nilikuwa nachukua natumia kawa vile niko ulcers. Ndio kanisimamisha juu nilikuwa na vidonda.
Isn't it dangerous for someone to be taking antiretrovirus drugs while not eating well?
Yeah, but we used to give them flour for porridge, for assistance, that is highly nutritious during the intensive phase. But that has since stopped because of the issues of funding again.
The issues of what?
Funding.
When we were in Kibera, nutrition was such a vital aspect, yet their nutritional program has been halted.
Like I mentioned, I think the issue of nutrition has been acknowledged globally and widely acknowledged that nutrition is a critical input in terms of management of HIV/AIDS. Unfortunately, one of the tragedies is that there hasn't been much resources devoted for nutritional interventions. For example, if you look at the PEPFAR, which is the presidential initiative of the US government to fight HIV/AIDS in several countries in the world, nutrition issues are not adequately budgeted for in terms of supporting care and treatment.
We have countless what we call earmarks from the US Congress. You could write books about this, where congressmen tell us you will spend X amount of dollars for this project, for this NGO in this country.
This is
every
congressional leaders
of the United States.
What do they know about what's going on here?
I'd ask you to judge.
Okay.
Like, what would your personal action be towards Africa if you had the money, which you don't?
I don't think money has anything to do with it. I mean, I don't think it's the only thing to do with it. There's not like a universal, replicable model for educating someone or for bringing someone out of poverty.
Here, can you stop doing that? Shooting that fire at me.
Then there's people who want to give money, and that's what I haven't figured out, is like what to do with, like how to convert money into good.
I mean, I think if people, yeah.
I mean, are we basically saying that everything we've seen we wouldn't support?
I think some of it's good.
Two weeks after we arrived in Kenya, the government declared that the country was in the midst of a famine. We left Nairobi, where there was no lack of food for sale, and followed Kenyan TV journalist Sarah Kamani to the affected region.
Are you a celebrity?
She won the African Journalist of the Year award 2 years in a row.
I didn't realize we were with such a prestigious journalist.
Well, I just worked hard. I actually just put in the stories. I didn't think we were going to win. Just for fun, like, hey, let me try. Sarah Kimani, NTV Weekend Edition, Sericho.
We can't keep children without water here. It's going to be closed down soon. Maybe as from tomorrow.
So what will happen to you, to all these children?
God knows what will happen to them. I actually don't know what is to be done. We have no water. Even for them to drink. Right now, when they go out for break, they will say, Malibu, I need water. Please give us water. We have not even a glass of water to give to them. A glass of water.
We spent the next week with Sarah as she covered the famine. Of the 10 million persons at risk, none were more affected than the pastoralists. These nomads, who spend their lives seeking pasture and water for their livestock, struggled to keep their animals moving in the blistering heat.
marka dawladda masaacada weyn aan ka rabnaa inay dawladda saacadeyso yaa rabnaa xoolo ma jiraan eber waa dhamaadeen.
You know what makes me sad is you go to a place like that where people are struggling so much, and then you think like, how do I spend my time? Going to the movies, having a nice pizza, traveling. That's how I spend my time. And then how should I really be spending my time?
Northeastern Kenya is known to have the most number of donors, whether it's in terms of education, whether it's in terms of food, whether it's in terms of provision of water. At this time when you're starving, can you feel the donors? Can you feel that there's international community somewhere doing something for you as the Boranas, or as people from Northeastern Kenya?
Donors are coming. They are coming with their own policy. They are coming with their own policy, and there are some specific fields where they want to support. And maybe the specific fields they are supporting is not relevant to the need of that community. For example, I think if here, the major problem we're having is lack of market and market coordination activities, because we depend on animals. When the animals are so fat with everything, you are forced to keep the livestock because there's no market where you can sell your animals. I think the donors have been supporting this community for the last 10 years. But the same problem reoccurs. Why?
I'm telling you, if I was not doing a story, if I was not here, I would put my camera down and I would tell these people, you know what? The minute you stop being dependent on the government, the minute you stop being dependent on these four-wheel drives that come and swing around here to make money, the minute you go hungry, because they're going to do this again next year in January. You'll see an overflow of four-wheel drives here.
What has been accomplished is to effectively put many African countries on a life support system. I think the longer term implications has really been to dwarf and cripple the ability of Africans to radically move from this very dependence-oriented idea that it's only outsiders who have the right ideas and who would help you, rather than asking themselves the hard and tough questions of taking full responsibility.
Tell me something. On our way here, we passed over 7 rivers. All those rivers were dry, but at one point, they are not always dry. Those are seasonal rivers. When they are full, what does your community do with those rivers?
Okay, this is something beyond the scope of the community. When those rivers come, when those rivers come, and I believe none of you have seen, you can't even go near the rivers, because the water comes fast. It's a flash flood. It comes in a very, very large, big volume, and you can't do anything with water that time.
The minute you finish that culture of whining, Haya, Mara, the river is too full, we can't fetch water. Mara, the river is too dry, we don't know what to do. There's never a time when the situations are good for you and your community. I am so sorry for you.
Somalia is the one country that people told us not to go to. They said it was a land of warlords and Islamic extremists, a place where US and Soviet aid and development money had fueled civil war. What they didn't tell us was that the northern part of the country had broken away from Somalia and renamed itself Somaliland. This unrecognized republic cannot be found on any maps, but claims that it has created a functioning democracy with little help from the international community. Having received so little media attention, Somaliland wanted to show us that it should be recognized as a country. We spent 6 days listening as the government tried to make its case.
I think we don't need any loan, any aid from anyone. We will tap our natural resources and we reinvest our money in our country so that our people will become in a better life. There is no need of taking aid. All Africans, all the third world, they take aid and they never become satisfied with the aid. It's not my view that we live on aid.
Could you ask her how much this bag of grain costs?
$11.
$11?
Yeah.
Because very cheap.
Your people have grew this, so it's good. You should see it.
Ask her how she got it.
She said, bring more of it.
Can we ask her how she got it?
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia sold it to her?
Yeah, it's Ethiopian food aid. The past history has shown that by giving money, blocks of money to the government of the day to do what it promises to do has never worked.
Do you think that aid and development that you just talked about was part of the reason for the civil war in Somalia?
Yes. The government was, you mean in the 80s, the Mohammed Siad Barre regime?
Yeah.
The 21 years he was in power, his regime was supported financially by the West. His government never even bothered to raise any revenue. They were getting a blank check every year. He had a big army. He was a rogue. So, better to leave us be, but not let a big man run the place with a blank check from the West.
What I wonder is, how is the public not going to be skeptical and think that, oh, it's another new beginning, but oh, it's just going to create a new dictatorship like it's happened in so many other countries. And it's not my intention at all to call you a dictator, because I've seen a wonderful democracy, but how are you?
Let me tell you frankly, there will be no dictatorship in our country. We have taken the model of the Americans. Only 2 terms we can run for presidency.
Somaliland's political success story for being champions of democracy in Somaliland. What Somaliland has achieved has been done largely without official U.S. foreign aid. We don't have any U.S. government presence on the ground.
This is Somaliland. Somaliland emerged from a very, very, very difficult period. Destruction, all destruction, total destruction. It's emerged from that bottom, and it went up without any support, without any extraneous influence at the same time.
This is an African country that does not depend on aid. This is an African country that does not have any debts, because nobody lends us anything. Therefore, we don't owe anybody anything. Whatever little we have is ours. We generate it ourselves. We make it happen the best way we can. And I think it's a story that is good for humankind because it shows the resilience of people. And if Somaliland can, anybody can.
So, better to leave us be. All the West promises us is just another dictatorship. The problem with the international community is they don't care who they deal with. It's just they don't care. It's just as long as their interests are met, that's it. And then this for us is a major problem. The generous hand that helps the poor people of the third world can sometimes be the very poison that makes them become even more poor.
Look how we should.
Even though the government's tour of Somaliland portrayed the country in a positive and prosperous light,
100,000.
Somaliland still faces many of the same challenges afflicting other African nations.
Refugees.
Most non-government organizations did not focus on what was happening in Rwanda. They got more interested on the refugees.
When people crossed the border, I remember standing at the border and seeing a lot of young guys, young men crossing with blood in their clothes. My first reaction was like, wow, these people are injured, we should immediately, and then I very quickly discovered that it wasn't actually their blood.
The non-government organizations and the UN agencies supplied them with food and jobs.
The next morning when we had the food distribution, the same guys came and lined up. And it was really a moral dilemma what to do.
And they used that food as capital. They would sell it and keep the money to buy arms. The non-government organizations were comfortably working with these murderers, genocidaires. And none of them said, we are dealing with people who have committed the most odious crimes in the world.
We definitely do not want to be taking one or another side. We're not there to contribute to the conflict.
Neutrality, which has no limit, is irresponsible.
To show us the after effects of the genocide,
You're welcome.
an aid organization introduced us to Patrick and Marguerite.
She wants to welcome you by giving you something to drink.
What does she have to drink?
Bonicio fite. She has juice, locally homemade banana juice.
Would it be okay to drink that? Just because I can't have local water?
The water is cooked.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Banana
Cooked
juice.
the water.
Okay. As we say, cheers. Cheers.
bapfuye mu bihumbi bibiri papa yapfuye 94 mama yari arwariye i Kabgayi.
She's saying that the dad died in the genocide, and then the mom also died thereafter. The mom was sick. She was sick. She was in hospital. And after the mother died, she looked after her siblings. And she was alone. And it was very difficult for her until she got help from Care International, which helped her join other children, talk about her problems. And then when the mother died, she said that after some time she used to be sickly. So she decided she wanted to find out if she's suffering from the same disease her mom was suffering from. So she went for a HIV test and she found she was positive.
ubwo rero cyaje kumbabaza ubundi kuba imfubyi ntacyo byari bivuga.
Well, she's saying that that life before was okay when the dad was alive. When he passed away, it was sad, but it wasn't as tough as when the mom died. God, I can't do this. And that being an orphan isn't such a big deal. She would have survived. She would have managed, but sometimes she thinks it's too much for her because it became even tougher when she found out she was HIV positive. But after they tested her, they refused to test the younger brothers because they said that it might be too much for the brothers to cope with. And she knows that the brothers are sickly, so she always worries that they might be sick too.
Careful of your toes, buddy.
Uritema utuno.
This guy's like Buddha. Okay, he's not in a good mood.
You must be hungry.
Are you hungry? Patrick?
Yeah.
ubundi n'ubundi nubuye ndakora nishimye ariko nibutse ibibazo naciyemo birambabaza bituma mbabara.
She says normally she's very happy. She only becomes sad when she remembers her problems and what she's gone through.
Ask her to tell us about the happy things in her life.
Niki kikunezeza mu buzima?
Radio.
The radio.
Look at this kid. He like finishes eating. He's like you, Brandon. Finishes eating and then just sprawls out. It's the good life, isn't it? Maybe not.
I mean, it's just happened.
Yeah, but they could be worms or something.
It's not a worm, it's a pimple.
Well,
Skin.
Well, let me just show you. This is quite small, but yeah, like I had on my leg. Just happened a couple days ago. It started out like this one, and then this one got bigger, and then it hurts.
This is worms.
It's worms.
So we are going to see whether it is egg or not.
Yeah.
We are going to disinfect. Don't be scared.
It's quite painful.
As fast as train and bus could take us, and stopped in Malawi. Because Malawi is one of the poorest countries on earth, it also has a huge prevalence of international organizations.
So these people that have come with me today are here to show love to you by bringing food.
anthu awonse amene abwera nali modziwa ali kuno kuonetsa chikondi chawo kuti ndi chikondi chawocho akubweretserani chakudya.
But we also want to bring you the love of Jesus.
Komatu tifunatu pamwamba pa chakudyapo tifuna tikubweretsereninso mawu a Mulungu. Ati pamwamba pa chakudyapo tibweretsapo chiyani? Pamwamba pa chakudyapo tibweretsapo chiyani?
Dear Heavenly Father,
Atate wathu kumwamba,
thank you for today.
zikomo chifukwa cha tsiku la lero.
And Father, I thank you for those that have provided funds to purchase this maize.
Ndithokozanso kwa iwo amene apisa m'matumba mwawo kuti chimanga chimenechi chipezeke.
Thank you for friends in Malawi and all the way from America
Zikomo chifukwa cha abale onse aku Malawi komanso ngakhale aku America
that gave money out of their own personal resources
amene akupereka ndalama kuchokera m'ntchito zawo zimene amagwira.
so we could share the love of Jesus here today.
Jesus. Up, Jesus. Down, down, Satan. Down, down, Satan. Up, Jesus. Up, Jesus. Down, down, Satan. Down, down, Satan. Sing me a song. Sing me a song. Yeah, Umarila. Namba Yisoni anaenda Samaria. Namnyamula anaenda Samaria. Namba Yisoni anaenda Samaria. Namnyamula.
The United Nations designated 2005 as the year of microfinance. In the hopes of jump-starting local economies and ending poverty, many Western aid organizations have turned to this ever-growing development trend. Microfinance programs disperse small loans for the purpose of starting businesses. With loans as little as $10, women sell produce, clothing, and other necessities in the hopes of turning a small profit.
Ndintetenga kubanisauza ndindagwira ntchito ndindagula katundu wanga nyemba khobwe mfuto nimaika panjira apo magulitsa nditagulitsa ndapezako 3000 moti zidanipindulira zina ndagulako mbale makapo mulatiyi.
Microfinance is still a fairly small industry in this country. The role it can play, in my view, one of the most important roles it can play is making credit available to women, and I think it could be an enormously important vehicle for women's empowerment.
Women, when you are just forming a group today, you will find that they are very shy. If you say, "What is your name?" she just says, my name, I've forgotten. But 2 years down the line, you will find that she's standing out and she's saying, "I have a lot of money in my clothes. I hide it from my husband because he may pick it from me and he may steal it and buy beer. But now I am the one who share the money with him. When he's in problems, I give him the money."
Although valuable, there are those that think that microfinance programs fail to provide long-term solutions to poverty.
Giving microfinance to the poor of the poor just to help them produce enough for themselves to eat shouldn't mean diverting those resources from capitalizing knowledgeable people. You get my point there?
You got 2,000 to start with?
Yeah.
And how many tomatoes did you get with 2,000? This is 100, this is maybe 200. So maybe 800 tomatoes. Approximately 800 tomatoes. So how many days does it take you to sell those 2 baskets?
Week.
A week?
Week.
1 week?
Mm.
So your profit is $1 a day.
Coming out of the poverty.
Out of poverty.
Donors are targeting, basically. They target the poor of the poor, the hungriest of the hungry. Now, let's momentarily forget about them. Let's target the middle class, people like me here. Because if you target me here, you'll be reaching most of these through work. They'll come here to work for a wage income. They'll come here to work for food. And then centers like this one, as the people come to work for us here, they are also adopting the technologies and practices that we use. And they're taking these out into their own small situations, so that at the end of the day, the communities are also behaving like us here now.
In the midst of a famine in Malawi, Dr. Chikuntha, an economist turned farmer, had managed to keep his organic farm at full production via water storage and creative irrigation.
So we started very small, about 100 square meters. Now we're about 20 hectares. We started with employing one person. Now we're employing 20 people a day. And when the food stocks are low, when the food stocks within the community are low or nil, this number swells up to 150 people per day. The poverty you see is only a symptom of a deep-seated problem. You don't address symptoms. Even a medical specialist will not address your symptoms. You only use the symptoms to get to the roots of the disease. So the root of the disease here, the problem in Africa is not the poverty. The problem is absence of knowledge to manage our rich resources more properly. We need to produce something that you people need, so that the money that comes in helps us to produce more. If you give us $10 million free, what do we give you in return? Nothing. Now, if next year you are going to double what you give us to $20 million, because you are going to get 20 million worth of bananas, we employ people here to produce those bananas. And that is what is going to create worth, and that is what is going to alleviate poverty.
Thank you. Cheers.
We couldn't leave Africa without addressing politics,
Hello.
an issue that so many along our journey had raised as crucial to Africa's development.
Without tackling the political issues in many African countries, you can't address the poverty issues, you can't address the security issues. How can you develop when you know that the foundation of the house is weak? There's no such a thing that this is development and this is politics. No, actually, development is politics and politics is development. Each of these things are so interrelated that I think it is a fallacy to try to draw rigid boundaries. If you put the political framework right, then you're actually releasing people's potential to participate in their governance, in terms of policies, in terms of decisions making, and then also you possibly can really hold your leaders accountable at the balloting box the next season if they don't deliver.
A country is never going to achieve development success through the intervention of outside organizations. But unless the machine is accountable and is delivering, if you put more money into it, it's going to make it worse.
And do you think that's happened in the past?
Oh, no question. No question. And
No question what?
what, that it's made things worse in some cases. I mean, you know, if aid dollars go into a government and a machine that is unaccountable and, you know, where the government does not have the best interests of the population at heart, it's going to make things worse.
Yeah.
I think, you know, where development's really taken off, it's often been because the governments have basically said, to hell with you, to a lot of the international organizations, and have just done it themselves.
With only a month to go, we crossed Zambia and Botswana, quickly approaching our arrival in South Africa.
Let me give you a scenario. A young girl walks down the street. One of her eyes is open, the other one is closed and crusted over with infection. She's got no shoes on. Stop everything you're doing. Ask the girl if you could take her to the hospital and pay for her to have her eye treated. Is that helping someone in poverty?
Well, then we have the response, which is maybe she doesn't want to go to the hospital because she uses her eye as a begging tool. And she doesn't wear shoes because it doesn't make her look as poor.
Okay, is taking her and getting her eye fixed helping her?
In that exact moment, if she wants to be taken to the doctor and helped, it is helping her in that moment. But it is not changing the situation that she's in as she gets infected with the same thing the next week, or anyone else is in that country, because there's no hospital there. So it's not, you're not changing anything.
I mean, this is really interesting because you help a person who's not in poverty think about poverty. Are you changing anything?
By letting someone think about poverty, you are in turn helping to change the situation of the impoverished by hopefully empowering someone to make decisions and, you know, and change.
It's ridiculous that you can say that actually helping someone helps less than just making someone think about someone. That you can say you're doing more good by making someone who's not in poverty think about poverty than helping someone who's in poverty.
Come on and just clap your hands. Just clap your hands. Come on and just clap your hands. And the microphone. You didn't do all the way. Danny cards are called. That's how we represent you. We on the dance floor. We so
Let me just start this again. All the Africans, put your hands up. Like you mean it, man. Like you actually love Africa. Like you really love this place that you're born in, you know? In order for us to work together, to speak out, to get involved, we need to be who we are and love who we are. Am I right? Do you love yourselves? I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
In Cape Town, we met Emil, the director of a local NGO. He uses hip-hop to educate youth about African empowerment and responsibility.
You know Eminem, but you don't know people who died for your freedom so we could sit together over here today. Yeah? A couple of years ago, you wouldn't be able to sit together like this. But you know Eminem, yeah? Something to think about. We need to change how we think in South Africa. You need to get involved. You need to say what's on your mind, all right? You need to, people died. Even if you go to the ballot box and just tear up the paper, you made an attempt. You got involved. You voiced your opinion.
A simple thing like we had this Heal the Wood project, and we brought some kids from Scandinavia to live in Mitchell's Plain and in the Cape Flats. And when they came to the airport, people at the airport, before we fetched them, told them as they came out, fetch their bags, people were like, "Yo, you're going to the Cape Flats? No ways, there's like a lot of gangsters. How can you live there? And you white kids don't survive, you know?" So they came out very nervous. And then they lived for a week on the Cape Flats, and they met the families, and they stayed with the families and made friends, you know. And when they met people and they told them, we were living on the Cape Flats and we're having a ball of people, like, what? And then something happened with the tsunami in that disaster. And the first thing that happened is that kids called me from all over the Cape Flats that same night. And like, "Hey, are our friends okay?" And suddenly it struck me of what we're not doing is we're removing the human face of everything that's happening in the world. It's all like in Africa, and people immediately, the image they get is like these kids with swollen bellies and like poverty stricken, and like one stereotype, it's just like across the board of what's from Africa. And it isn't your friend that you met. You didn't visit the family. You didn't get the real story behind it. Really get the suffering and the pain that's involved. And it wasn't like it was your family. It's very removed. And I think that's the important part. They need to bring back the humanity. And I think from that experience, I learned that it's important for us to go to places we haven't gone before, and to make friends with people that are from different communities. It's very difficult, but it's like the same way apartheid forced people apart. We need to force ourselves to do that, force ourselves to think differently about things.